I paid for the family vacation, but my stepdaughters said I was just a random man in their lives. I removed myself from the booking and sent them with their mother in economy. Laughter was replaced by tears. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now, let's get started. My name is Ethan. I'm 41 years old, and for 8 years I truly believed we were a family. Not a blended one. Not a compromise patched together with politeness and obligation. A real family. The kind built from love, not blood. The kind that survives storms because someone decides to hold the door shut from the inside. For 8 years, I was that someone. Lauren had 2 daughters when I met her, Sophie, who was 10, and Maya, who was 7. Their father, Greg, lived several states away, a man who appeared in photos but not in person. Every Christmas he sent a card, always signed in cursive, always sealed with promises that sounded like apologies dressed up as affection. "I'll visit soon. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Next summer, I'll be there." His words were his only currency, and he spent them like they were free. I was the one who paid in real ways. I drove the girls to school, to soccer practice, to piano recitals that stretched long into evenings. I sat in bleachers surrounded by biological fathers who looked at me like I didn't belong. Maybe they were right. Maybe part of me didn't. But I showed up anyway. I was there when Sophie got the flu, when Maya broke her wrist falling from the monkey bars, when the dog died and the whole house went silent for a week. I was there for everything Greg missed. Lauren and I met at a community fundraiser in Austin. She had a calm sadness about her, the kind that made people want to take care of her. I mistook that for strength. She laughed at my jokes, told me she hadn't done that in years. I didn't realize then that I was walking into a life already fractured, stepping into the outline of another man. But I told myself love could heal what time had broken. 2 years later, I married her. I still remember the small courthouse, the smell of rain, the way Sophie clung to my arm while Maya hid behind her mother's dress. After the ceremony, we went for burgers, just the 4 of us. Maya finally looked up from her plate and called me Dad. It was small, almost accidental, but it hit me like sunlight through a storm. I didn't correct her. Couldn't. From that moment, I was theirs fully, irreversibly. We moved into a 2-story house with a garden and a pool that shimmered under the Texas sun. I built a swing in the backyard, laid tiles myself, painted the walls in colors they chose. Lavender for Sophie, sky blue for Maya. Every corner of that home carried my fingerprints. Every bill had my name on it. I worked long hours, but coming home to their laughter made the exhaustion bearable. Sundays became sacred. We made pancakes, burnt half of them, argued about music, and ended up laughing around the table. We went to the beach every spring, road trip to Galveston, sang off-key in the car. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I thought we were building something unbreakable, brick by brick, gesture by gesture. Sophie grew fast, sharp-minded and creative. She wanted to be a designer. Maya loved animals. She talked about becoming a vet. I wanted to give them everything their father never could. Stability, safety, a home that didn't vanish when things got hard. I paid for their art classes, tutoring, school trips, braces, clothes, birthdays, college prep. Anything that could give them a future brighter than mine. I didn't count the cost. Love doesn't keep receipts. Sometimes Greg called. I'd hear his voice through the speakerphone, warm and careless. "Hey, princess, how's my girl?" he'd say. My girl. The words hit me like a splinter each time. I'd be in the kitchen, washing dishes, pretending not to listen, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. Because no matter how much I gave, there was always that ghost in the room, the man who had left but still owned the title. Lauren said I shouldn't let it get to me. "They know who's really there for them," she'd whisper, resting her head on my shoulder. I wanted to believe her. I needed to, because without that belief, everything I did felt like a performance without an audience. Years passed in rhythm. Work, home, laughter, small disappointments. We built routines so convincing they almost felt like peace. The girls grew taller, louder, more independent. I taught Sophie how to drive. I helped Maya build a science project about ecosystems that won second place. I stood beside them through every milestone, Every heartbreak, every tear. Sometimes, when I caught them laughing together, Lauren and the girls, I felt something fragile stirring inside me, a quiet joy mixed with fear. Fear that it could all slip away if I ever stopped giving. That my worth in this family was conditional, hanging on what I could provide. I tried to silence that thought. I told myself families weren't built on debts. They were built on love. But late at night, when the house was silent and the moonlight cut through the blinds, doubt crept in. I'd wonder if the girls ever really saw me, not as the man who paid for everything, but as someone who loved them beyond obligation. Did they understand the sacrifices, the overtime shifts, the missed weekends, the quiet exhaustion behind every gift? Or did they simply assume that love meant money and presence meant permanence? Lauren and I rarely fought, but when we did, it was always about Greg. She insisted the girls needed him in their lives, even if he was unreliable. I agreed, at least out loud. But inside, resentment festered. It wasn't jealousy. It was injustice. He had abandoned them, yet still held the title of father. I had carried them for years, yet still felt like a visitor in my own home. On Sophie's 16th birthday, Greg sent a diamond bracelet by mail. No card, no call, just a package. She wore it proudly, showing her friends, telling everyone it was from Dad. When she hugged me that night, it wasn't the same. Something had shifted, small, almost invisible, but I felt it like a fracture beneath the surface. Still, I stayed. I kept building, kept paying, kept believing, because that's what fathers do, even when the world refuses to call them by the name they've earned. For 8 years, I gave them everything: money, time, heart, and faith. I told myself we were solid, that no ghost from the past could shake what I had built with my own hands. But now, looking back, I see it clearly. Our balance was never real. It was a house built on borrowed foundations, a fragile illusion held together by my effort alone. And deep down, I think Lauren knew it. She knew that one day the ghost would return. And when he did, everything I built, every laugh, every Sunday morning, every sacrifice would be tested. But back then, I was still blind, still proud, still believing that love could make me belong. I thought I had a family. I didn't know yet that I was only renting one. It started quietly, like most endings do. One evening, Lauren told me Greg had called. His job was moving him closer, just a few hours away. He wants to be part of their lives again, she said, like it was something beautiful. I nodded, pretending calm, but something inside me twisted. For years, he'd been a ghost, an occasional signature on birthday cards, a memory fading in the rearview mirror. Now he wanted back in. At first, I convinced myself it was good. The girls deserved their father, even if he was unreliable. Maybe he'd finally step up, and maybe I'd be able to breathe. I told myself that a man like Greg couldn't shake what I'd built over 8 years. But I was wrong. He arrived like a storm, pretending to be sunshine. He took the girls to dinners at places I couldn't afford without blinking. He brought gifts, new phones, designer sneakers, concert tickets. Suddenly, every small thing I did seemed dull beside his grand gestures. He had no rules, no curfews, no responsibilities. He was fun. I was structure. He was a fantasy. I was reality. Sophie and Maya came home glowing after those first weekends. Dad says you worry too much, Maya laughed once, tossing her new jacket onto the couch I'd bought. Dad says you should loosen up, Sophie added. It was the first time I heard it. Dad says, 2 words that hollowed me out. I tried to ignore it, but the words kept multiplying, creeping into dinner conversations, into car rides, into everything. Dad says Austin schools are terrible. Dad says we should spend summer with him. Dad says you don't understand us. Each phrase chipped away at what little authority I had left. Lauren said it was a phase. They're just excited, she whispered. It'll settle down. But her voice carried doubt, and her eyes avoided mine. When Greg started visiting more often, school events, birthdays, random Sundays, she didn't object. I watched her smile at him too easily, laugh at jokes that weren't funny. It wasn't infidelity, not yet, but it was something colder. Complicity. I told myself not to overreact. I kept paying the bills, driving the girls to classes, staying late at work to fund their futures. But every act of care started to feel heavier, thankless. Greg never offered $1, never stayed long enough to handle a problem, but somehow he became the hero. One afternoon, I came home early from work. The girls were in the living room, faces lit by the glow of their phones. They didn't hear me at first. "Dad says he's taking us to Miami this summer," Sophie said. "Real dad," Maya corrected, laughing. My chest tightened. "Real dad." The words echoed like a verdict. I didn't say anything that night. I grilled dinner, cleaned the kitchen, watched the sun slide down behind the garden I'd planted. Lauren joined me on the porch, glass of wine in her hand. "They're just kids," she said before I could even speak. That's when I knew she'd heard it too. The next weeks were a slow unraveling. The house grew quieter, not from peace but distance. The girls started whispering in corners, texting Greg during meals. I'd hear bursts of laughter from their rooms followed by silence when I passed by. I tried to ask what was funny once. Sophie rolled her eyes. "You wouldn't get it." It was a small sentence, but it hit like a hammer. Because she was right, I didn't get it. I didn't understand how loyalty could vanish so fast, how love could turn conditional overnight. A month before summer, I decided to plan a family trip. Mexico. A week together, something to remind us of what we still were. I booked flights, reserved a beachfront villa, arranged everything down to the smallest detail. I wanted to believe that a vacation could fix what was breaking. We were having dinner when I told them. "I've booked the trip," I said, smiling. "Cancun, next month." Maya's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Sophie exchanged a look with her sister. "Actually," she said slowly, "Greg already invited us to Miami that week." Lauren's eyes flickered. "Maybe we could," but Sophie cut her off. "It's fine, Mom. We'd rather go with Dad." The silence that followed was heavy enough to drown in. I tried to stay calm. "I've already paid for everything," I said quietly. "Flights, hotel, excursions." Sophie shrugged. "You can cancel. You'll get a refund." Maya laughed under her breath. "Yeah, don't stress, Ethan." Ethan, not Dad. Not even the polite stepdad they used when friends were around. Just my name, stripped of warmth. I looked at Lauren, waiting for her to say something, to correct them, to stand by me. But she just stared at her plate, silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "They're not entirely wrong, Ethan. You're not their biological father." The words landed like a punch to the chest. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I just sat there, nodding slowly, feeling everything inside me go still. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint laughter of the girls down the hall. The house I'd built suddenly felt foreign. Every picture frame, every chair, every surface held memories I no longer belonged to. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The sun hadn't risen yet. I went to the study, pulled out the travel documents, and stared at the booking details. I called the airline first, canceled my ticket, then changed theirs to economy. Then I called the hotel, cut the reservation to 3 guests. No explanation, just facts. Lauren woke as I was packing a small bag. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Staying home," I said. "You 3 go. Enjoy it." She stared at me, confusion twisting into guilt. "Ethan, please." But I walked past her. "It's fine, Lauren. They're right. I'm not their real father." 2 days later, they left for the airport. I watched from the porch as the car disappeared down the street. The house was silent again, heavy but honest. That evening, I poured myself a drink and waited. When the message came, it was short. Lauren's text flashed on my phone. "Things aren't what we expected. The hotel was a disaster. The air conditioning broke, the food was awful, and their luggage hadn't arrived. Greg, apparently, had promised to fix it, but disappeared after the first day. For years I'd carried them, protected them from the world's small cruelties. Now they were meeting reality without the safety net I'd built. The laughter that had replaced my name turned to arguments, complaints, and silence. I didn't reply to her message. I simply turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the house I'd paid for. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace, cold, distant, but real. Because sometimes, the only way for people to see your worth is to let them live without it. They wanted their real father. Now they had him. And now they'd learn what that really meant. I didn't shout. I didn't beg them to stay. When the car disappeared that morning, I simply closed the door and listened to the quiet fill every corner. It was a different kind of silence, clean, merciless, truthful. For the first time in 8 years, the house belonged to me alone. Their laughter, their footsteps, their careless demands gone. I thought I would feel emptiness. Instead, I felt air. Still, habit is a strange thing. I caught myself setting 4 plates for breakfast before realizing no one was coming. I poured extra coffee, glanced toward the hallway expecting voices. Old reflexes die slower than love. I left the table as it was and went for a walk through the garden, the one I'd tended so carefully for years. The roses were blooming, absurdly bright, as if mocking the collapse of everything they had symbolized. I trimmed a branch, breathed in the smell of earth, and told myself this: let them see what life looks like without your hands holding it together. By afternoon, my phone began to vibrate. Messages from Lauren, then Sophie, then Maya. Flight delayed. Hotel smaller than the pictures. Why did you cancel your ticket? I read every word and answered none. They wanted independence. They had it now, complete with moldy walls and broken air conditioning. I imagined them standing at a reception desk arguing in English slowed for translation, the way tourists do when money doesn't fix things. Greg should have been there to save them. But Greg was exactly who he had always been, temporary. On the second night, Lauren called. I let it ring until her voice turned to voicemail. Her message was shaky, caught between anger and fear. Ethan, please. Things here aren't right. The place is terrible and Greg, he's gone. He said he'd handle it, but he left early. The girls are upset. Just call me back. I listened once, then deleted it. She wanted me to resume the role of rescuer, to erase the lesson before it settled. Not this time. While they were away, I learned what peace costs. The evenings stretched long and quiet. I cooked for myself simple meals, eggs, toast, a single glass of wine. The house felt larger, but not lonely. It was honest space. Every object had weight again, every sound meaning. I realized how small I had made myself to fit into their world. I'd shrunk around their moods, their needs, their worship of a man who had abandoned them. Now the air tasted cleaner. 3 days passed before the next call. This time, Sophie. Ethan, she said, voice trembling. The room's disgusting. There are cockroaches. The hotel says we have to pay for upgrades because the card Greg gave Mom didn't work. Can you please? I ended the call. I wasn't cruel. I was consistent. Actions had to mean something or nothing ever would. That evening, I found myself on the porch, the sky bruised purple with sunset. I thought about the years behind me, every overtime shift, every bill, every birthday cake I'd stayed up to decorate. All of it had been built on the belief that love could earn permanence. But love without respect is servitude. I had served long enough. By the 5th day, Lauren's tone changed. The messages were shorter, stripped of entitlement. We're coming home early. I'm sorry for what I said. Please talk to me. I didn't reply. Regret born of discomfort isn't repentance. It's survival. I wanted them to return not to comfort but to consequence. When they finally arrived, I was in the garage repairing the lawnmower. The sound of tires on gravel pulled my eyes toward the driveway. The car door opened, and the silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Maya stepped out first, sunburned, shoulders slumped. Sophie followed, dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel. Lauren looked older, tired, defeated. Her hair pulled back in a knot that had given up halfway through the day. None of them spoke. Inside, the air conditioning hummed softly, indifferent. They moved like guests in a house they didn't recognize. The girls went to their rooms. Lauren stayed by the door, watching me set down my tools. It was awful, she whispered. I said nothing. She tried again. Greg left after 2 days. He said something came up. His card declined at the hotel. We had to pay cash for food. The girls. Her voice cracked. They missed you. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at her. They missed convenience, I said quietly. Not me. She flinched like the truth was too bright to face. I walked past her into the kitchen. Dinner's in the fridge, I said. Heat it if you're hungry. It wasn't cruelty. It was boundary. She'd spent years crossing lines drawn for my own dignity. Now the lines were real. Later that night, Sophie knocked on my study door. I didn't turn from the paperwork spread across my desk. Can I come in? She asked. Her voice was small. I nodded. She stepped inside, holding the broken bracelet Greg had once given her. It snapped, she murmured. I waited. I thought he'd fix it, but he doesn't answer my texts anymore. She looked at me then, eyes rimmed red. You were right. The words were almost inaudible. For a moment, I wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But I remembered every time she'd called me a stranger in my own home. Good night, Sophie, I said. She hesitated, then left. The door clicked shut like a period. Lauren tried again 2 days later. She made breakfast, the old Sunday ritual resurrected like an apology. Pancakes, fruit, the smell of coffee. She placed a plate before me, smiling too carefully. We can fix this, she said. They understand now. They know who's real. I looked at the table, at the effort laid out like evidence. Lauren, I said softly, understanding isn't the same as change. Her smile faltered. What do you want me to say? She whispered. Say nothing, I replied. Just live with what's left. That afternoon I listed the house for sale. The realtor asked if we were relocating. Something like that, I said. When Lauren saw the sign on the lawn, she broke. You can't do this, she cried. This is our home. I met her eyes. It was mine. You just lived in it. She covered her face and sank to the floor. I didn't comfort her. Some griefs have to be felt without rescue. Within a month, the papers were signed. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Bare walls, quiet mornings, the hum of traffic instead of family noise. Freedom rarely feels like triumph. It feels like anesthesia wearing off. But I could breathe. I learned to cook for one, to sleep through the night without waiting for doors to slam or voices to rise. Sometimes I still set 2 plates by mistake, but less often now. Lauren stayed with her mother. The girls went back to school, older in ways they hadn't earned. Occasionally I see them around town, at a cafe, in the grocery store. They avert their eyes, unsure whether to smile or hide. I nod once and move on. The ache is dull now, manageable. Respect was expensive, but I paid in full. People tell me forgiveness is freedom. Maybe. But I've learned something different. Sometimes freedom comes only when you stop financing your own captivity. I stopped paying, and the world kept turning. They learned that love without gratitude dies quickly in the real world. And I learned that peace begins where obligation ends. Was I wrong? Maybe. But when I close my eyes at night and hear only silence instead of accusations, I know this much is true. Their laughter once filled this house, and now it's gone, replaced by something colder, sharper, but real. The sound of my own life beginning again. A month passed before Lauren reached out again. Her messages had changed. Gone were the accusations, the guilt-soaked pleas, the little storms of blame. Now they were short, quiet sentences. We understand now. The girls want to talk. Please, Ethan, come home. I read every word in silence. They didn't ask for forgiveness. They asked for restoration, like a customer returning a broken item. But the receipt had long expired. The house was gone by then. I'd signed the final papers, handed over the keys, and watched the new owners move in. Another smiling family, full of beginnings. Their laughter echoed down the street as I drove away, that familiar sound twisting in my chest. But it wasn't sorrow anymore. It was relief disguised as ache. My new place was smaller, a 1-bedroom apartment overlooking the river. The walls were blank, the floors bare. No photos, no evidence of the life I'd lost. Only what I'd chosen to keep. A worn leather chair, a coffee table scarred with years of use, and the quiet hum of peace. The first night there, I slept without waking once. No footsteps down the hallway, no whispers behind closed doors, just stillness. Days folded into a rhythm. I worked, cooked simple meals, walked along the river after dark. Sometimes, out of habit, I'd glance at my phone expecting updates from the girls. Grades, birthdays, small victories. Nothing came. I told myself it was better that way. They needed to live with the silence they'd created. The same silence they'd forced on me at that dinner table when Lauren said the words that ended everything. One afternoon in early autumn, I ran into Maya at the grocery store. She was pushing a half-empty cart. Her shoulders slumped under the weight of things too heavy for her age. When she saw me, she froze. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then she smiled, small and uncertain. "Hi," she whispered. I nodded. "Hi, Maya." We stood there between the shelves of cereal and canned soup, the air thick with things unsaid. "How's school?" I asked finally. She shrugged. "It's okay." Then, softer, "Mom's working 2 jobs now." I nodded again. "That's good." She bit her lip, studying the floor. "I miss the house," she murmured. "And you." The words landed somewhere deep but muted. I wanted to tell her I missed her too, that I still woke sometimes expecting to hear her laughter echoing through the hallways. But the truth was, missing someone doesn't always mean wanting them back. "Take care of yourself," I said instead. She nodded, eyes glassy, and pushed her cart away. That night I sat on the balcony, city lights trembling across the water, and thought about everything I had built and lost. Love, it seemed, wasn't destroyed in a single moment of betrayal. It decayed slowly, like wood rotting from the inside while the paint still gleamed. For years I'd been patching over the cracks, pretending we were solid. But families built on gratitude, not blood, collapse the moment gratitude fades. Lauren called again a week later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice worn thin. "I know I hurt you. I know the girls did too. But we're trying to start over. Sophie got a job. Maya's applying for scholarships. They finally understand who was there for them. They talk about you all the time." Her breath caught. "I just wish you'd come see them. Just once." I replayed that message 3 times. Maybe part of me wanted to believe her, to imagine they'd grown, that time had taught them what I could not. But then I remembered the way Sophie's voice had cut through that dinner. "You're just a random guy in our lives." And Lauren's silence, how it hung heavier than any insult. Some words don't fade. They brand you. The next morning, I deleted the message and blocked her number. Not out of anger, but necessity. Healing sometimes looks like cruelty from the outside. But forgiveness doesn't always mean return. Sometimes it means closing the door and never checking if it's still locked. Months went by. Winter came, sharp and clean. I learned how to fill the space I used to share. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. The canvases piled up, messy and imperfect, but honest. I filled them with the colors of memory. The yellow of Sunday mornings, the blue of Lauren's eyes when she lied, the dull gray of that final silence. Every so often, I saw Greg around town. He always looked rushed, thinner, worn down by whatever life he was pretending to manage. Once, he passed me outside a coffee shop. Our eyes met. He nodded first, uncertain, as if asking for permission to acknowledge me. I gave him none. Let him live with the weight of the family he'd broken twice, once by leaving, once by returning. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. Selling the house, walking away, cutting them off. They say a man should fight for family. But I did fight. I fought for 8 years in ways no one saw, in ways that bled me dry. I fought every day I showed up while another man collected the title. The truth is, some wars end not with victory but surrender. And surrender, when chosen, can be the bravest act left. Still, at night, there are moments when I remember the laughter. The smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings, Maya's drawings taped to the fridge, Sophie falling asleep on the couch during movies. The echoes of what might have been. They come like ghosts, gentle, almost kind. I let them stay for a while, then let them go. A year after everything ended, I received a letter. No return address, just handwriting I recognized instantly. Sophie's. Inside was a single page. I'm sorry. I understand now. I hope you're happy. Nothing more. No request, no manipulation. Just words, fragile and late. I placed the letter in a drawer without replying. Some apologies are meant only to exist, not to be answered. Now, when I think of them, I don't feel anger. Just distance, vast and quiet. Lauren and the girls live with her mother in a smaller house on the outskirts of Austin. I've heard they're managing, learning what responsibility really costs. Sometimes I pass their street by accident. The lights are dimmer now. The laughter, when it comes, sounds softer, tempered by lessons learned too late. As for me, I live simply. Work, paint, sleep, repeat. There's a woman I see sometimes. Kind eyes, no children, no ghosts in her laughter. She doesn't measure love by what I can give. She simply stands beside me in the quiet, and for the first time in years, I believe that might be enough. I know people talk. They say I was heartless, that I should have stayed, that children make mistakes and parents should forgive. Maybe they're right, but forgiveness without change is permission for repetition. I gave enough permission to last a lifetime. Some lessons are expensive, and I paid the full price. But I'd pay it again, because peace isn't given. It's earned the moment you stop trying to be loved by those who only needed what you could offer. Their laughter turned into tears, and my silence became the only truth left between us. So I ask you, was I wrong? Or did I simply choose to stop being the only one holding the house up while everyone else watched it burn?